It's a treacherous terrain which is making this operation difficult, but special forces, Gaurav, you're telling us, have been roped in. Could you tell us more about the additional forces, the elite forces which have been roped in now to hunt down these terrorists, Gaurav?
So these terrorists were holed up in a hideout in a mountainous terrain, and it's very thickly forested terrain, not far from the village in Kokarnag. The area is called Gadol. General area Gadol is what it's known as. When the intelligence input came, it was assessed, and the local COB, the local company operating base, or the company commander, with his troops, he was going to lead an operation. But the commanding officer, seeing the gravity of the intelligence input that had come in, and the the fact that foreign terrorists, Pakistani terrorists were there, decided to mount a bigger operation. And actually, the apprehension was maybe terrorists will try and escape. So they mounted a bigger cordon. They were putting in place a bigger cordon. And the CO himself moved in to be with the company commander when this operation was mounted, as did Muzammil Bhatt, Humayun Muzammil Bhatt, the DSP. And they went in. It was a very difficult climb. It was a very steep climb, is what I've been told. And just as they were climbing and reaching, the place where they were to set up their base for the operation, that is where the fire came from an unexpected corner. That is where this, while the cordon was being laid around these officers and that area, that is when firing started, and there were casualties. The terrorists tried to flee at night, but by then the cordon was in place, and the terrorists could not escape. But it also shows how our officers lead from the front. They don't send in Jawans first and then follow up. So much so that the moment this thing happened, the Corps commander, the Chinar Corps commander, he himself, along with the DGP and IG Kashmir, ADGP Kashmir, went to the ground to tell the soldiers, we are with you, we will fight and defeat the enemy.
Okay, Gaurav there, of course, bringing us all of the details of the operation as it took place, and how, of course, we are sending in additional elite forces now to hunt down these terrorists who have killed 3 of our brave officers and ruined families. We're out to get them, and that is, in fact, the focus of the operation right now. It is a treacherous terrain. They ambushed our personnel as, in fact, the cordon was being laid, and that's very unfortunate and tragic. But now, of course, our officers, our soldiers, our Jawans on the ground, everyone has vowed to avenge the martyrdom of these brave hearts. Gaurav there, of course, bringing us all of those details at the moment. Just thinking about the families, you spoke about DSP Humayun Muzammil Bhatt, Gaurav, leaving behind a small baby. Just the families that have been ruined, young officers that we've lost in a very, very unfortunate way, Gaurav.
It indeed is. He's a second-generation Jammu and Kashmir police officer. His father was a Deputy Inspector General of Police, and those images were really heartbreaking when Humayun Muzammil Bhatt's mortal remains were brought to police lines for the wreath laying, and his father stood erect, stood tall, in anguish, in pain, having lost a son at a time when the family was rejoicing the birth of a child just less than a month ago. And instead of being on leave, the officer actually participated in this counter-terror operation. Goes on to show the dedication of this family to keep our country safe from Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. And unfortunately, he was killed in this counter-terror operation, as was this very, very brave officer, Colonel Manpreet Singh of the 12th Battalion of the Sikh Light Infantry, 19 RR. He has 2 very young children. Son is just 2 years old, daughter is 6 years old. The family lives in the plains. And it's really painful to see this. And I have unfortunately covered so many of these incidents since the 1999 Kargil war and the attacks that have subsequently taken place in Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of our country, that I sincerely hope that our nation unites, speaks in one voice to ostracize Pakistan till Pakistan remains a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror, Polami.
Absolutely, absolutely. What more can you tell us about Colonel Manpreet Singh and Major Ashish Dhonchak.
They were both very brave officers. That's what I've been picking up, from speaking to those who were close to them, those who were aware of this operation. You would recall, Anantnag, or as some call it, Islamabad, was at one point of time considered liberated land, and not too far back, Anantnag was one place where terrorist Burhan Wani had spread his terror tentacles, and they wanted to establish an Islamic caliphate. That is to understand the mindset of these people in that area, in the heart of that area, where Jamaat-e-Islami at one point of time was very strong. This incidentally is also a stronghold of PDP leader Mehbooba Mufti. So that entire belt of Tral and Anantnag is where the army moved in a very big way after the killing of the terrorist Burhan Wani, and started de-radicalizing elements, because they had been told that Nizam-e-Mustafa is coming. They had been told that their Islamic caliphate was to be established, and the amount of radicalization that is taking place in South Kashmir, where, the political leaders ensured that army was removed. There were pockets that were created where terrorists could fill in the vacuum. But this is where one battalion went in, 19 RR, in a very big way, and established, their rapport with the Awam. Where did the intelligence come from? The intelligence came from the Awam, because the Awam, the people of Kashmir, do not want to deal with these radical Islamist terrorists. They want to move forward. In fact, you would have seen images of celebrations on Independence Day when Chandrayaan successfully was launched or landed on the moon. This is where they want to actually reach the moon and do better in life, but Pakistan state-sponsored terror holds them back. That is where these braves, reaching out to the Awam through their Sadbhavna operations, through reaching out to people, were making major impact. Unfortunately, this team was stopped by Pakistani terrorists and locally radicalized elements. Hopefully, the next team will succeed in ensuring that Kashmir becomes the Jannat that we hope it is once again.
What more, Gaurav, that you can tell us about the terrorist group which has claimed responsibility for this attack?
So it is Lashkar-e-Taiba. It is a UN-designated banned terrorist organization, and because of the ban, and because they're known as Lashkar-e-Taiba, and their handlers and their ecosystem tried to tell them that you need a more secular name and not sound like either a Jaish-e-Mohammed or a Lashkar-e-Taiba or a Hizbul Mujahideen. So, they wanted to get out of their Islamist names, and then they chose some TRF kind of a name, so that the Western media would not go after them, or elements in the West would not go after them. It is Lashkar-e-Taiba. It's the same terrorists. It's the same handlers of Pakistan's ISI. So, a Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist, Abu Qasim, was neutralized at a mosque, Al-Qudus Mosque in Rawalakot in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And this terrorist organization claims that this was a retaliatory strike. This is just a claim. There is no independent verification. It's just that these terrorist organizations do a lot of psychological warfare and propaganda. But according to the army, this operation was being planned for some time, when there was information about Uzair, who's a local terrorist who went underground in 2022. Information came in that he was floating around in that general area around Kokarnag, in that Gadol village, around Gadol village. That is where this operation was mounted, and it is very unlikely that it has anything to do with what happened across the line of control. But it would indicate that terror is once again trying to rear its ugly head. The moment there is a vacuum, these terrorists try to float into that area. And perhaps now more coordinated attacks will be mounted on either side of Pir Panjal to neutralize these terrorists. You heard the army commander yourself,
Right.
General Upendra Dwivedi, who said that because 2.2 crore terrorists are expected, Pakistan wants to ensure that tourists do not succeed and terrorists succeed, which the army will not let terror succeed.